the ability to move about freely and maintain your independence is one of the biggest of all health issues that those in their middle years and beyond face. Yet you really don't hear enough about this. And, well, if it's a little hard now to get off the couch or to go up the stairs or to bend down and pick things up and so forth, well, those are really bright red flags that things are only going to get worse unless you start addressing it now. And Dr. Splichal is about to reveal truly vital and widely unknown keys to protect and improve your mobility, starting with one of the most essential yet overlooked parts of the body, your feet. However, right now, I want to make certain you have full awareness of and take action on protecting 3 other very key sections or areas of your body that many people in their middle years and golden years often don't give enough attention to, at least not until serious problems arise. Now, we're holistic beings, and every single part of your body is, of course, important. However, when it comes to your muscles and joints in relation to your mobility, your ability to be independent and move about on your own very late into your long life, well, you especially want to make certain you are strengthening and protecting 1, your back, especially your lower back, 2, your hips, and 3, your ability to move laterally, to move from side to side, and therefore the lateral muscles in your legs. Now, I likely don't need to dive too deep on the why when it comes to these 3 areas because it's almost self-evident, right? I'm sure many people listening now, well, unfortunately already suffer back pain, for example. Lower back pain is a top cause of disability, and I'm sure it's not hard to imagine what happens if you suffer increasingly severe issues with your back, especially your lower back. Meanwhile, each year, over 300,000 older people in the U.S. alone suffer hip fractures. 3/4 of those people are women, and 95% of those fractures are caused by falling, and it's mostly from falling sideways, by the way. Unfortunately, hip fractures greatly increase the risk of early death, largely because those who suffer these fractures are largely immobilized, which of course severely impacts all other aspects of health, mental, physical, and emotional. And I must add, though, that hip fractures don't have to increase the risk of early death. It's just that many people who suffer them stay sedentary instead of working with a professional, for example, to move a lot, physical rehabilitation. And even minus getting an actual hip fracture, hip pain is a very widespread problem, as you likely already know. And as you can easily imagine if you don't know, similar to lower back pain, when your hips are in pain, your mobility, your freedom of movement is seriously hampered. Now, I mentioned that most hip fractures are due to falling down sideways. Falling itself is the #1 injury that causes death and disability in older people, and it's high up there for even those in their younger middle-aged years. And falling down not only causes hip fractures, they also commonly cause serious head injuries, as well as broken arms and broken wrists and other issues. So I must first note that doing strength, balance, and stretching exercises for all the major joint and muscle areas in your body is what is most highly recommended. Now, that said, these are 3 areas you especially want to focus on routinely: your lower back and the abdominal muscles, which are in front of your lower back. Number 2, your hips. And again, number 3, the side movements, the lateral muscles in your legs that are so key to protecting you from falling. Along with all that Dr. Splichal is about to reveal in my interview coming up in moments with her, well, these 3 regions of your body are what most protect you from losing your freedom of moving around on your own. And I must stress to make sure you do all 3 types of exercises that I mentioned for those regions: strength exercises, balance exercises, and stretching. Now, you can certainly find great exercises of all three types for those three key regions of your body by searching online. It's also very helpful, of course, to work with a trainer if you're able to do that. And please listen. When you order the complete recordings and transcripts of this Live Long and Thrive Summit, you get 18 truly worth your while bonuses. And one of those bonuses, bonus number 18, that I encourage you to take a look at on the page below, is a collection of 10 of the most important health guides that I have personally ever created. Now, one of those 10 guides, it's called How Not to Lose Your Mobility as You Age. The 17 keys to maintaining your freedom of movement. And please do take a close look at this in-depth report as soon as possible, because it includes a visual guide to top exercises that you can do for these areas I mentioned, along with many other essentials on this really important topic of maintaining your freedom of movement. And all right, well, because smiles and laughter are also some of the greatest exercises of all for your healthy heart and brain, how about I share a few, actually, wonderfully bad dad jokes that make my little kids giggle. And let's start with a movement-related one, because we're on the topic, and because we have the world-renowned movement specialist, Dr. Emily Splichal, coming up here in just a moment. So, what do you call a number that just can't keep still? A Roman numeral. And what kind of exercises do couch potatoes love to do? Diddly squats. All right, one more. Why did the hamburger go to the gym? To get better buns. Okay, while she might not get you better buns, I've got my interview with the world-renowned podiatrist and human movement specialist, Dr. Emily Splichal, coming up, and her unique and important insights certainly can improve the length and quality of your life. So, I'm going to take a very brief break here, everybody, and I will be right back with Dr. Emily Splichal. Welcome to the Art of Anti-Aging's Live Long and Thrive Summit, where today's top healthy aging and longevity doctors and researchers from a range of different disciplines each reveal their most effective steps that people are not yet widely aware of to avoid and possibly even overcome disease, live long, and thrive. This is Brian Baisley, and because your feet and your overall mobility are more key to you living long and living well than you may even realize, I am so excited to welcome Dr. Emily Splichal to Live Long and Thrive. Now, Dr. Splichal is one of today's leading functional podiatrists and human movement specialists, and she's the founder of the Evidence-Based Fitness Academy Global and the creator of the popular Barefoot Training Specialist certification. With over 25 years now in the the fitness industry, Dr. Splichal has dedicated her medical career to studying postural alignment and human movement as it relates to barefoot science, foot-to-core integration, and sensory integration. And you're about to get a strong sense of why that all matters tremendously to your health and longevity. And everyone, please write this down. Dr. Splichal is also the author of an incredible book called Barefoot Strong: Unlock the Secrets to Movement Longevity. Now, if you do want to live long and thrive, well, and of course you do, that's why you're here, this little book is a true must-read on movement longevity, an essential topic that really far too few people are even aware of. And listen, if you like your books direct, to the point, practical, filled with crystal clear guidance that unlocks those secrets to healthy mobility now and well into your future, you will really appreciate this book. It's called Barefoot Strong, so write that one down, and please do check that one out later. And with all that noted, well, hello, Dr. Splichal, and welcome to Live Long and Thrive.
Hello, and thank you so much.
All right, Dr. Splichal. Well, before we get to the big question, I do have a fun little question for you. Now, I know you've dedicated so much of your time and your energy to helping your patients, to guiding other doctors and health professionals, and really teaching the world about taking proper care of our feet, our posture, our overall movement to live long and well. And that and other, well, top responsibilities in your life likely have not left you with too much free time to pursue certain other things you may love to pursue. So that's all my big build-up to ask you this fun little question. If I could just snap my fingers and poof, you would instantly become an expert at any one thing, what would that one thing be and why?
I'm going to come back as a Cirque du Soleil performer.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yes, it is. My side hobby passion is doing aerials, and obviously there's a lot of dedication that I cannot put in because I'm impatient, but in my next life.
Oh, that's really neat. But you have as a hobby?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, that is really cool. Well, in that case, this is going to switch to a video format, and I want to see you do some tricks or something. No, I'm kidding, but I love Cirque du Soleil, and that's an amazing and unique answer, by the way, that I haven't heard from anyone before. And I know, man, I've met, I don't know them personally, but I've talked enough to know that takes a tremendous amount of dedication. So, yeah, I guess it's going to be the next life, right?
Right.
Yeah, amazing. That's a really cool answer. All right, well, let's get to the big question here. So, thriving while living long versus merely surviving while living long really is our ultimate goal, of course. So with that in mind, from your areas of expertise, really, Dr. Splichal, will you please share 3 to 5 of the proven most effective steps to avoid, possibly even overcome disease, live long, and thrive while doing so? So what would your first step be?
Yes, so obviously coming at this from a functional podiatry perspective, my goal is to help people move. I think that the secret to longevity is deeply integrated into our ability to move, to keep the circulatory process and get all of that important blood flow all the way up into our brain. To do that, my first tip is going to be make sure that you can feel your feet. So that first step means that you are going to activate, wake up, or put some sort of intent behind the sensory side of the human foot, which means take your shoes off, go barefoot around the home, walk outside in the grass to get a little bit of earthing, but try to feel the different textures and surfaces that our nervous system and our feet could encounter every day to wake up the brain and wake up your feet.
All right, and I don't want to jump ahead, but why is that so important? I'll leave it at that for starters here. I have a lot of side questions on this, but why is that so important?
So movement is all about perception and perception of your physical body in space. It also has to do with the perception of your feet and how they feel the ground. So if you cannot feel your feet, you cannot feel the ground because of thick cushioned shoes, or maybe you have neuropathy. It could be one or the other. The accuracy of the movement, the accuracy of the foot placement is going to be decreased. When I look at optimizing human movement, it always starts with step one, perception and awareness.
Perception and awareness. So wake up every day and actually with your feet, not with socks on even, not with certainly shoes on, feel different textures inside your home. Ideally, if you're able to go outside your home, feel different textures. Let me expand the lens on this and ask you what to you may seem an obvious question, but again, this area that you've dedicated so much of your energy and your brilliance to really does not get enough attention in the first place. There's many people listening who, they're well aware of eating properly for longevity, but why in general, if you don't mind, do our feet even matter so much for longevity?
So we have thousands of nerves in the skin and the bottom of our feet, and those nerves are touch nerves, very similar to the palm of the hand, and based off of how our brain relates with the external environment, it's all based off of sensory stimulation. So there's this part of the brain, happens to be called the somatosensory cortex, and it is how we control movement. Walking, running, dancing, all the activities we love to do. The information that shapes movement is based off of sensory, which is very much based off of touch. So the hands and the feet happen to be some of the most sensory sensitive areas in the human body, which makes sense because feet touching ground helps us to navigate posture and balance and movement in general. And then obviously we're interacting with external objects, and that would be the hand stimulation that comes in as well.
Mm-hmm. Right, so this is certainly not something, unless you're already familiar with Dr. Spligel's work, that you're going to hear every day, folks. But it's important to try to remember it and put it in play every day. Your very mobility, your ability to move in a healthy way is highly dependent on the sensory relationship that she's talking about, these senses in your feet. So this is tremendously important, even if you haven't heard it before or haven't heard much about this before, is to stimulate and keep those nerves basically in your feet stimulated. And I have that right? Because you are definitely expert here, and I'm rather green myself in this area. You've educated me to some extent, but I want to make sure I get this right.
Yep, you are absolutely correct in getting some sort of targeted, focused stimulation to the feet is really necessary to unlocking this movement longevity that we're speaking about. And again, it's very simple. It doesn't have to be something that takes a lot of time or work or effort outside of what you do on a daily basis. It just means adding in a little bit of barefoot movement, maybe when you get ready in the morning. So I try to have it done so it's actually achievable for an individual, or if I'm recommending this to a patient.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And grounding, it's just one side aspect of this. And again, if I'm jumping ahead here, you just let me know that. But grounding, that's just one aspect. It's not just grounding. There was a fair amount of attention been put on grounding itself. And if you don't mind explaining even that to folks in case they don't know. But that's just one side and interesting and worthwhile aspect of this. But in general, everyone listening, it's simply going barefoot in your home is great in getting that different sensory aspect of things, that touch and stimulating it all and keeping it sharp. It's kind of keeping your brain sharp, starting with the bottom of your feet. But if you don't mind on the grounding a bit.
Yeah, so grounding or earthing, so some people know it either way as far as how it's referred, is originally based around connecting to the earth, going outside on the grass, on the dirt, thinking natural surfaces. And the reason that that is so powerful is that the earth has a natural negative charge. Everything is based around magnets, kind of this polarity, and the earth has a negative charge of the magnet, if you think of it. Our bodies, acidity, inflammation, the aging process is all built around a positive charge. Mm-hmm. I refer to it as acidic, but again, it could be positive and you think of the earth as negative, or the earth would be a base and we're an acid. not to get too chemistry on there, but
I love it.
so if we think of it kind of in this magnet or a base and an acid, is you are trying to neutralize or balance out the acidity or the positive charge in the human body, which is where aging comes from. Mm-hmm. Spending 15 minutes a day on the earth or grounding is very effective in balancing out this acidity or positivity. Now, there's a lot of research around grounding and earthing, not just on dirt and grass and actual natural surfaces, but by using grounding pads. You can use a grounding mat, a grounding blanket, things like that. There's natural elements that can be woven into fabric that are naturally grounding. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the research around this shows increased circulation to the feet, decreased viscosity to the blood, so that's part of the circulation benefit, improving your circadian rhythm. So I love to ground or earth when I travel internationally. So I'm going in extreme time zone changes. So how do I center my body? I do that through earthing and grounding in the local time zone that I am in. We're really good for, again, reducing inflammation. So there's a lot of research in the space that is making it more and more accepted within the longevity community.
Okay. Well, that's not only very helpful, but quite fascinating as well. Again, stuff is, most people realize we're not hearing every day. We ought to at least be quite familiar with it. So everyone listening, it's sensory stimulation of the feet in general is fantastic. Great way to start the day, to paraphrase Dr. Spergel here. And one aspect of that is great to try to get in every day if you are able is grounding or earthing for fascinating reasons that Dr. Spergel just noted. And even if you can't get outside, you could search online for the various types of earthing mats, etc., that she mentioned that may be a worthwhile investment. So that's wonderful. Already off to a fantastic start here. What would another important step be to essentially live long and live well?
Another great step that I focus on for movement longevity particularly is based around foot strength. So, of course, muscle strength is important to posture, to balance, to how we move and do functional activities. The strength that I'm focusing on here is going to be your foot strength. And strong feet are feet that are connected to your body's center of gravity, which is your core. Mm-hmm. So this is a lot of the foot to core integration and sequencing that if people start to look at my work, they'll see I reference a lot. That I try to get everyone to build strong feet that are theoretically connected to your core.
Okay, great insight. It makes sense when we step back, everyone, and we think about this. It's just like movement is so key to our health, our happiness. So there's the thriving aspect of longevity, and feet are clearly and obviously core to our ability to move. But if I may, how more specifically can we keep our feet strong?
So there are very easy ways to strengthen your foot muscles. One of my favorites is called forward lean. I'll describe how to do forward leans. So you would stand up nice and tall with your feet shoulder width apart. Arms are by your side, and then you are going to imagine that you are stiff as a board. You're standing nice and tall, stiff as a board, and then staying stiff as a board, you're going to slightly lean your body forward. So imagine, not as extreme, but kind of how a ski jumper would lean forward, like Michael Jackson would lean forward. So would lean forward, and then by shifting your center of mass ever so slightly forward, what will happen is you will feel your toes activate, and they're going to anchor into the ground. And then you'll go back into a vertical position, relax the body, do it again, lean forward, your toes reflexively will push into the ground, and then I have people essentially sway forward and back 5 to 8 times. Now, what this is doing is activating a postural reflex. Your body does not want to fall over. That's a huge part of your nervous system protecting itself, is not wanting to fall. So this lean forward, toes activation, postural reflex is waking up your toe flexors, which is really where balance, power, acceleration, push off, all of that comes from strong toes or toe flexor strength, which is a foot-based strength or muscle function. So by doing that, and the more that you essentially build off of that, you can then build an awareness every time you lean forward and your toes push down. Oh, I feel my abs contracting at the same time. So that's that co-contraction that I was referencing. Forward lean, one of the easiest. Standing on one leg is an awesome way to strengthen your feet. Your feet are very active when you are balancing, so I will teach people to do that. And then a third great exercise is called short foot, which is essentially doing the same thing as the forward lean, except you don't lean your body forward. You just intentionally push your toes down into the ground, and that creates a doming of your foot and a contraction of your deep foot muscles.
Fantastic. All right, so just let me review for everyone. The first exercise, your feet shoulder width apart, stiff as a board, and think Michael Jackson. Or, like you said, I see the skier in my mind who's about to leap off, a ski jump. So you're leaning forward into that. Second exercise, simple as can be in terms of at least describing it to you. Some folks have challenges with that at first, which is standing on one leg. I do have a question about that. And then the third is pushing your toes into the ground, essentially. So on the standing on one leg, what do we do if we can't do that?
So if standing on a full single leg is difficult, you can do what I refer to as a kickstand. Mm-hmm. Kickstand would be just kind of partially propping the opposite foot down on the ground so that you are starting to shift your body weight. That is a great way. Of course, you can, have your hand on a wall or a chair. Now, for movement longevity and thriving, you as a baseline want to be able to balance on one leg for 10 seconds. And there's a lot of research showing that a 10-second single leg balance is really this baseline of how you could predict fall risk. And then also the inability to stand on one leg for 10 seconds is correlated to increased morbidity and mortality. So it is something that I try to emphasize with my patients, is this goal of working up towards a full single leg stance, 10 seconds on each leg.
Yeah, wonderful. And I want to explain briefly to everybody, you're not doomed if you can't stand on one leg. Maybe Dr. Spickle, you could describe the basics of why that's connected to longevity. Our balance involves, obviously, our foot strength, which is what Dr. Spickle is describing here, as well as our eye, our brain, and you can improve it. So this is super important if you cannot stand on one leg yet to work on doing so via the tips that she just gave here. But maybe a little expansion on why that's connected to longevity, if you don't mind.
So the correlation between balance and longevity is based around movement and walking, right? Going upstairs, walking across the room, walking a dog requires this ability to stand on one leg. A great analogy of how our gait changes and the impact it has on longevity is imagine trying to ride a bicycle really slow. So the slower that you move on the bicycle, it's actually harder to balance, and the fall on the bike is increased the slower you go, right? This is kind of physics and momentum. So part of walking, balance, longevity, you're really talking about fall risk and fall reduction. We don't want to fall. There are many risks associated with falls, especially with age. So the ability to walk at a certain speed requires you to have single leg stability. As we lose our balance, we essentially respond to that by slowing down how fast we walk. And I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news here. You are absolutely correct that you can strengthen this. These are things that you want to start now. Everyone in their 20s to every age, it doesn't matter, should be incorporating as part of their healthy lifestyle or their daily routine just a little bit of single leg stimulation. And that could be just a minute of balance exercises every day, which cumulatively will have this effect on your overall balance and awareness.
Yeah, I love it. And this is why Dr. Spickle's work is so important, everyone, because as you can hear now, you're strengthening your foot strength, you're also strengthening the relationship between the senses in your feet and the rest of your body all the way up to your brain. In other words, you're also sharpening your brain. You're preventing a top cause, actually, for those I think it's 65 and older, the top accidental cause of death is falls. It's a top cause of disability as well. And just doing this, as she noted, these 3 exercises are wonderful to start with. Like she said, a few minutes a day, collectively on each of them can go a long way. And by the way, I'll throw this in. I know your mood is also going to improve just by doing these things, because I've done it and my mood has improved as well, again, because of that relationship, that interplay between your senses and your brain, and you're working all parts of your body, so to speak, when you incorporate this. So really appreciate these important insights, Dr. Spickle. What would another essential step be to live long and well?
So my next tip would be to focus on foot recovery. Again, I'm coming at this from the functional podiatry perspective. So it is focusing on a reset or a release of your foot muscles, foot circulatory system every day, which allows you to reverse the stress and the impact of all the steps and the movement you did during the day.
All right. And on that one, you're going to please expand a little bit more so I can understand and everyone else more deeply. Really appreciate that.
Yes, so to reset and recover your feet, I love to do a 5-point foot release. Think of this like a massage. You could use a lacrosse ball, tennis ball, golf ball, neuro ball, something that is designed to release and massage the muscles in the bottom of the feet. Now, it's not just the muscles, it's really the circulation it's also benefiting. So for here, I would recommend that someone stands on a golf ball, holds the pressure for 30 seconds, release, go to another point on the foot, hold constant pressure for 30 seconds, release, and you're essentially repeating that for 5 points per foot. Now, the benefit of this is, of course, you're getting the actual massage of the muscles. There's 26 muscles in the bottom of your feet that are contracting essentially all day. When you stand, if you have a standing desk, your foot muscles are contracting. When you walk, your foot muscles are contracting. So they get worked throughout the entire day, and we often forget about what is a really good way to just give those hardworking muscles a little time out.
I like the expression reset when we're thinking about massage here, because, it's interesting when something feels good. On the one hand, that can be a reason unto itself to enjoy something. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. However, it is your body's way, in my view, from what I understand with massage in other regards, of saying this is good for me. The reset is just a great way to think about it, everybody, is that you've potentially, hopefully not beat up your feet during the course of the day, but if you did, even more so important. But the point is it's realigning simply by doing this enjoyable activity you do recommend a daily basis, right?
Absolutely. So every day, I would love if everyone could do this 5 minutes at the end of the day. And one additional benefit or connection that I want the listeners to think of is that all of the muscles in the body are connected, and they're connected through what's called fascia. Fascia is kind of the saran wrap that wraps around all of our muscles, our bones, our tissue, and connects us. The bottom of the foot is actually fascially or connected to the muscles that run up your lower legs, your calf, your hamstrings, up your lower back, up through your neck, all the way to the top of your head. So let's say you have a little bit of low back fatigue. By simply doing a 5-point foot release, you can take pressure off of a lower back, off the neck. So it's really powerful. It's not just thinking of a foot release locally, but what does it do to the rest of the body?
So again, I'm not going to delve into reflexology here and your views on that, but the basic concept that you just described is that by massaging, resetting these muscles in our feet, which again, folks, it's enjoyable to do it. It feels good every day. Doing that, you're really doing a sort of reset, not only for the muscles in your feet, but you're helping other muscles throughout your body as well, right? I mean, so it's all connected, and it's a great vision to have of that when you're doing this, everybody, is that it starts in the feet and it just works its way throughout your body. And again, I don't want to overspeak Dr. Splichal, but I have that right?
Yeah, 100%. Everything is connected. There's another fascial line that runs from the bottom of your feet through the outside of your lower legs. So thinking the IT band, if you're familiar with that, that's kind of on the side of your upper thigh. Very important with standing, running, single leg stands. It controls the knee and knee alignment. So that can also be released through the bottom of the foot. So honestly, I like resets, releases, techniques that you get the biggest ROI or return on them. And releasing the bottom of the feet has a very high return because of how many muscles and connective tissue runs through the bottom of the foot.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's all kinds of gadgets out there that people can invest in to massage the bottom of your feet. But in your experience, you've seen the good old tennis ball, or, if you like more focused, the golf ball, these sorts of things work just great, right?
If it's what you have, I do not want the price of a product or the additional step of getting a product to be the barrier to entry into this technique. So you could even stand on the handle of a dumbbell if that's what you have at your disposal. So I just need people to do the technique.
Yes.
And find something if you want, or you can invest in a product. There are many products that are not that expensive within this space that would allow you to get a more targeted release.
Wonderful. And well, because of you, I am doing this routinely. And this is just a weird little aside question related to how so much is connected to starting from the bottom of our feet. When I do this sometimes, I have very noticeable weird little sensations that occur occasionally in other parts of my body, well away from the feet. So that's not just something in my head, right?
Absolutely not. So you're demonstrating this interconnection, and that's where I think it would be great for the listeners to appreciate that same thing. And this is why I actually love feet, is because they are so powerful and influential on the rest of the body. And I never look at the human body in any technique as just into the feet. Your feet will ultimately affect other places in the body, and you essentially are demonstrating that you have felt that as well.
Yeah. So interesting to think about. In various places of the body, it's like electricity, in a positive way shooting. And I'm like, wow, that was really cool. So you'll see, if you don't do this, folks, you'll please definitely take this step, all these steps that Dr. Splichal's describing here. Again, you will feel instant energy in a very soothing way. It's like soothing energy by doing this, by the way, and it's all connected, so it's outstanding. This has been wonderful so far. So what would another powerful step be, basically, to live long and live well, Dr. Splichal?
So this one, I am going to go back to the balance just because I really want to emphasize this aspect of it. So my fourth recommendation that I give to everyone as far as movement longevity is optimizing our single leg stability. Spoke about it already, but the way that I encourage people to challenge their single leg stability, once they have perfected this 10-second balance perhaps, and you're ready to progress, is to create natural perturbations. Now, a natural perturbation is really how can I disrupt balance and single leg stability without having to go on a wobble board, like a very difficult wobble board, a BOSU, something really unstable that could be intimidating to someone, or is too large of a disruption that they could actually hurt themselves. So the way that I like to do balance exercises is on the ground, flat surface, hard surface. So I would actually want you on like a kitchen floor versus the living room carpet. So something hard. You're standing on one leg, staying there for 10 seconds. Okay, now we're going to perturb it. A way to perturb would be to keep your head totally straight, and all you're going to do is just slowly move your eyes to the right and to the left. It's a really subtle movement that you're just changing your gaze. That perturbation is referencing a little bit about what we were discussing further or earlier, how all the sensory systems come into how we maintain balance. So you're just going to subtly play with your visual field to perturb or disrupt your single leg stability. That's one. Second one would be keep your eyes focused on one point and very, very subtly just shake your head no, like little tiny rocks no, or very subtly nod your head yes. Small movements, right? So we're just very subtly perturbing the vestibular system to then perturb your balance. Okay. Third one that I would give you is a dual tasking. So you'd be standing on one leg, eyes are focused, you're not going to move your head, eyes are focused. And then I would just have the patient or the individual count backwards from 100 in multiples of 3 or 7, something that is going to shift you into a cognitive process so that the single leg stability becomes subconscious. So I'm just kind of playing with how your brain actually uses balance. Is optimal balance or single leg stability during daily movement is designed to be in the background.
Yep.
Which means you have to train your nervous system in your brain to do it in the background so that you could have a conversation, you could make a decision, you could be doing something at the same time. So that's the way that I would elevate the single leg stability or the balance for movement longevity.
Wonderful. Again, everyone listening, you don't want to be quote unquote frail, right? You don't want to lose your ability to move freely. So much of your independence is dependent on that. And that's what this is all about. This is why this is so underserved, first of all, and vital, and why I'm so honored and happy that we were able to get you here, Dr. Splichal, because you want to train, in other words, your brain, your body, and it really does, as you're hearing, start with feet, move its way up into your body from there. You want to train your body to not be wobbly when you're walking up the stairs, not be wobbly when you're trying to get off the couch, or creaky. You don't want to walk and potentially fall, because falls, as we already described, are a top cause of serious health issues and, frankly, death. This is so vital for that, to train your body, starting with your feet, and of course training your brain, as we've been describing here in the process of anticipating and being able to respond to various things that could happen very late into your life, 70, 80, 90, beyond that. Wonderful, wonderful insight. My question on this is, can we work our way up beyond that? So first, we've done 10 seconds and we've mastered balancing on each leg by itself for 10 seconds. We move on to these wonderful steps. Eyes left, eyes right, without moving the rest is one of them. Shaking your head slightly no is another one. Multitasking, basically, or dual tasking, counting backward by threes, etc. So our brain's engaged in something else in addition to the balance. I love it. It's clear. Can we take it even higher after that? And should we, I guess, and try to get even more challenging and do Cirque du Soleil eventually?
Well, Cirque du Soleil is not required, but yes, you can make it more challenging. The next way, and these do not require purchasing any products. The next way that I would actually make it a little bit more challenging is, I would say, put your shoes on. Now we're going to be doing this with our shoes on versus the first one I told you to hopefully be barefoot on a hard surface. We are now going to go in our shoes. Can you create that same sense of stability when you are in your shoes? Hopefully, yes, because part of the transfer to functional movement is that you have to be in the footwear that you would need the balance or the stability. The reason why I do it barefoot, even though ultimately you need to be in shoes, is because I'm trying to access the nervous system as fully as possible. When I work with high-level athletes, I do the exact same thing, and I refer to it as barefoot before shod. Shod means with shoes on. So I am waking up the nervous system, activating the brain, optimizing the neurosensory approach to balance. Then, once all of that is awake, I put you into your shoes because now everything is turned on. So your balance theoretically should be better now when you're in your shoes. But that's how I would progress that, would be to go into shoes. If you've mastered that and you want another level, then I would start to incorporate movement, and I would be doing dynamic balance, which it could be stepping up and stepping down, just a small step. And that's now taking balance into a dynamic form. Could be the same thing. Every time you step up and down on the step, do something cognitive, do something dual tasking at the same time as doing that, as just an example.
Great. Well, again, because of you, I've been doing this sort of thing a while. So I balance on one leg, and I've gotten to the point where I could swing my other leg back and forth. And that's pretty good, right?
Yes, so that is then taking an element of momentum or kind of a pendulum-based movement on the other side. So yes.
Okay, I just wanted some credit there. That's
Credit given.
for doing what I've been told. I'm kidding, but in all truth, this is wonderful insight that we just don't hear enough, folks. And if you want to thrive while living long, this, as you can understand now, is so vital. So you've given some great, clear, practical, very helpful insights here. Do you have another step to live long and live well, essentially?
So I have one more step or recommendation, and that is based around calming, controlling, and connecting to your autonomic nervous system, which may seem like a recommendation that a podiatrist would not give. However, the nerves of our feet, so our ability to feel our feet, or neuropathies, or numbness that we might start to feel in our feet, neuritises, our entire nervous system, which is connected, is very much under the influence of the autonomic nervous system, which will be your fight or flight response. So here's the example, is if we get thrown into a fight or flight response, we get stressed out, we get anxious. So there's this elevation in our state, our emotional state. That will have an effect on your entire system, not just, oh, I might feel tightness in my chest. It will actually flare up symptoms or the nerves all the way down to the bottom of the feet. It can affect your circulatory system, meaning your micro circulatory system all the way down to your feet. So I will see symptoms in patients, meaning foot symptoms in patients being triggered by a elevation in their emotional state.
Wow. So is this effective both ways? And what I'm asking, I think you understand, is if I address those emotional states in other capacities, have you seen improvement in the foot symptoms? And then the reverse, by addressing foot symptoms, including some of the steps you've so kindly described here, does that help the emotional state?
Yes, so they can absolutely go both ways. And this is particularly in those that may have chronic neurological conditions or a chronic condition. Oftentimes, chronic conditions have a emotional layer built into them because there's a processing of the chronicity of the symptoms that the individual is experiencing. So the more that we can connect with, change the mindset, maybe do daily habits that minimize the symptoms of what we're experiencing in our feet, ultimately changes the emotional relationship to the initial condition in the feet. So it could absolutely go that way. Sometimes it is the mind shift that would reduce the foot symptoms. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of things like acupuncture, red light therapy, meditation, all of these holistic integrative techniques, is because they are really important to calming that emotional state and our relationship with our body, with sensations within our body, with the external world. Because again, my goal is this movement longevity.
Right. So a lot of folks lately, at least we've been hearing more, and rightfully so, about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic is the fight or flight response, or paralysis as well. And it's this heightened state where at one time in our ancestral history, it was good the way it worked. If there was a lion about to attack us, boom, we're in fight or flight mode. The parasympathetic is calm, cool, collected state, basically, in my words. And unfortunately today, so many of us are living far too much in still that sympathetic state. It doesn't help with, exposure to a lot of things that are on TV, online, and it just feels like a lot to be tense about, and a lot of us in this heightened state of tension. So I want to be careful and ask you to qualify what I'm saying here, but for example, if you are potentially feeling issues with your feet, this could certainly have something and potentially a lot to do with it. And on the flip side, by attending to your feet, including the massage comes to mind first, the reset, but all of these wonderful exercises and steps that Dr. Splickle's described can help reduce that sympathetic mode to some extent. So again, I just want to make sure that I got that right.
And that is 100% correct. And again, just a few of the tips for the listeners that, meditation, breath work. I actually am a big fan of moving meditations, which could be just taking a walk outside, connecting to nature. Yes, reflexology, so getting a foot massage or doing the foot massage yourself, meaning the pinpoint pressure release, is really good. The vagus nerve, which is what's connecting to your parasympathetic system, actually runs all the way down to your feet. So you do get a good benefit from doing foot massage. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways, and it is very influential.
I love it, Dr. Splickle. That's really good to hear. Thank you. And, well, by the way, who doesn't like hearing that something that feels as good as foot massages is so strongly recommended for physical, emotional, and mental health? Everyone listening, on that front, I must stress that routinely visiting massage therapists is pure gold for your health and longevity in general. Research shows it certainly is beneficial for combating stress and anxiety, and it also helps improve your circulation, decrease muscle and joint stiffness, helps combat pain, of course, and it can even boost your sleep quality and your immune health. And as you just heard, it's important to focus at least part of your massages on your feet specifically, or visit a reflexologist who is highly trained in your feet specifically. Meanwhile, Dr. Splickle also noted breath work, everyone, which I personally practice daily and has been remarkably helpful for eliminating stress. Now, research also shows breath work is exceptional for healthy blood pressure and for helping you spend more time in the very healthy deep sleep stage of sleeping. Now, as for red light therapy that she mentioned, well, that's another I personally use, and it is simply amazing for reducing stress and anxiety, for boosting what I'll call a calm and sustained energy, and it's also wonderful for improving your skin's appearance. Now, for those who don't know, red light therapy utilizes the natural low wavelength of light, the red light on the spectrum, to achieve these benefits. You simply expose your skin to a lamp or device that provides the red light. Now, quality and safety are essential here, but you don't have to spend thousands on a quality red light device anymore. Check out the LumBox, for example, LUMEBOX, if you are interested in a very easy and very effective therapy called red light therapy. And finally, Dr. Splickle noted that moving meditation, such as walking meditation, is very helpful for stress. Now, as the name implies, walking meditation certainly involves taking a long walk, ideally out in nature, and it also involves walking with intention, meaning just making sure to focus your attention on what surrounds you, to let yourself really see and smell and otherwise sense your surroundings. If your mind wanders to your to-do list or someone you need to call, just gently try to bring your attention back to your surroundings. It's very powerful indeed, a wonderful way to experience the benefits of meditation. And Dr. Splickle, well, talking about walking, that reminds me of shoes. And I'm sure you get this question all the time, but what is your perspective on and recommendations regarding shoes?
So when it comes to footwear, my goal as a functional podiatrist is to get everyone as close to natural as possible. Now, natural shoes would be more minimal shoes or quote unquote barefoot shoes that have very little cushion to no cushion, zero drop, meaning they're totally flat, maybe a slight heel toe drop, so a slight heel in them. Wider toe box, you can twist them and turn them and fold them and wring them out like a rag. So it's as natural as possible. That is my goal. However, when I give footwear recommendations, I'm always doing it based off of looking at the individual's foot type, meaning do you have a really flat foot? Do you have a very ligament lax foot? Do you have a really high arch, rigid, stiff foot? I have to factor that in my recommendations. 2 would be injury history. So do you have on and off plantar fasciitis for 5 years? That's very different. I have to recommend footwear based off of understanding that injury history. Or do you have no injuries ever in your foot? Very different. 3rd would be the activity or the demands that you are going to put on your foot once you have the footwear on. So meaning, are you going to run outside on the sidewalk, just as an extreme? Or are you wearing them in the gym when you lift weights or do kettlebells with your trainer, just as an example? So ideally, if I can get everyone as close to as minimal as possible, that is my goal. It could be for certain activities that I get you into a more minimal shoe, and then the majority of your day-to-day activity and stress, you are maybe in a little bit different shoe, but that's my goal. So do I recommend shoes that have cushion? Yes. For certain foot types, certain presentations, certain activities? Yes. Do I recommend some that have built-in rockers? Absolutely, because certain foot types, especially arthritis in the big toe, things like that, they really want to take advantage of the rocker in the shoe. So I try to be as unbiased in my recommendations, knowing what is ideal from a movement longevity perspective, and then I meet the patient or the individual where they are and where their reality is.
Fantastic. So I appreciate that, and I bet you've got that question before, but appreciate your answering it. And well, unfortunately, we have to hoof it on out of here, and boy, I couldn't resist that terrible pun, but we have to go, and I could actually, and I'm sure people listening would agree, listen to you for another hour, because this is such an important and yet relatively little known topic, despite all your efforts. Listen, you handled that like someone in Cirque du Soleil. That was a very graceful, fascinating, and also incredibly helpful discussion. I really appreciate it. So in a way, you are achieving that goal of yours, because that was fantastic. Appreciate it. Listen, everybody, I have one very strong recommendation. As you can tell from that interview, this is vital insight, vital information. You don't hear it often enough. You don't hear it at all in some cases. You're going to want to go deeper. You're going to want to go deeper. Definitely check out Dr. Emily Splicall's wonderful, concise book, Barefoot Strong, Unlock the Secrets to Movement Longevity. Again, if you like your books direct to the point, practical, filled with some fascinating and crystal clear guidance, much like that conversation we just had, you're going to adore this book on a topic you don't hear enough about, and it's truly vital to live long and thrive. While your toes to easily wiggle inside and not feel constrained is also very important. If your shoes feel tight around your toes at all, do avoid them. Number 3, and here's one a lot of people don't know, always shop for your shoes in the afternoon, because your feet can swell 10 to 15% in the course of a day, and shoes that feel right in the morning may not fit comfortably at all later in the day. Now, you heard Dr. Splichal recommend wearing minimal shoes whenever possible, especially if you're doing any type of activity. And just in case you don't know what that means, you can search minimal shoes online. They're quickly growing in popularity, actually, and they're simply shoes that tend to be made of minimal amount of materials and that closely approximate you being barefoot. Many of the shoes feel like you are almost going barefoot, though they do have some support. All right, and here's one final important tip when buying shoes. be sure to get your feet measured at least once a year because, well, you may think you know what your shoe size is, but especially as we get older, it can change quite a bit and quite quickly. They often get longer and wider as we get older. And all right, let me ask you this. What kind of shoes do ninjas love? Sneakers. And what kind of shoes do frogs love? Open-toed. And what is often made of canvas and sounds like a sneeze? A shoe. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to give myself the boot here, but only for a few moments to grab a sip of water. And then I'll be right back with our big interview with the legendary MD, known worldwide for preventing and reversing disease with nutrition, and that's my good friend, Dr. Joel Fuhrman. He's going to reveal a rather surprising food to conclude your meals with, along with his own other little-known and proven most effective steps of all to live long and thrive. So give me a few moments, and I'll be right back. Welcome to the Art of Anti-Aging's Live Long and Thrive Summit, where today's top healthy aging and longevity doctors and researchers from a range of different disciplines each reveal their proven most effective steps that people are not yet widely aware of to avoid and possibly even overcome disease, live long, and thrive. This is Brian Baisley, and I am honored to welcome my good friend, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, to Live Long and Thrive. Now, it seems that everyone is rather familiar with Dr. Fuhrman, and rightfully so, considering the incredible impact that he has had on our collective diets and health. But just in case you aren't familiar, he is an MD who is board certified as a family physician. He is a 7-time New York Times bestselling author and a nutritional researcher who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional and natural methods. Now, through his medical practice, through his wonderful Eat to Live retreat, and through his many fantastic books and television specials, Dr. Fuhrman shares his life-saving nutritional protocols with people around the world. His work and discoveries are published in medical journals. He is involved with multiple nutritional studies with major research institutions across the U.S., and he also serves as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. And this is always amazing to me. Dr. Fuhrman's 5 PBS specials have raised more than $70 million for PBS. Now, his most recent book is Eat for Life, and truly, this is a masterwork, a masterpiece in my view, that provides you the science-based nutrition program that prevents and can reverse many health problems in a pretty short period of time. If you are wondering a best book of the many wonderful books by Dr. Fuhrman to start with, I do recommend Eat for Life. And with all that noted, my friend, welcome to Live Long and Thrive.
Thank you. I'm so looking forward to this discussion today.
Yes, me too. These are always incredible discussions with you. So, Dr. Fuhrman, you know, even when we put really helpful principles in place like those that you're about to share here today, and we do live long and thrive, our time, our energy are still the two, in my view, most precious resources that we have. And because of other higher priorities in our lives, we may not get to master everything in this life that we'd like to master. In my view, that's actually a wonderful gift because there is so much in this world we could do and could master, and we have all those choices. So with all that noted, and before we get to the big question, let me just ask you this. If you could instantly, snap fingers, become an expert at one thing, what would that one thing be, and perhaps why?
You know, I've never spent the time to dedicate myself to it. There's a lot of things I'd like to learn and like to do, by the way, of course. But one thing that came to mind was I'd love to be able to walk out into the woods, into the jungle, into the forest, and be able to recognize the wild edible foods. You know I can identify some like parslane, which is so good for you and growing all over the place. But there's a host of hundreds of different natural edibles where you can just plop yourself almost anywhere in the United States and find food to eat in the wild. And I'd love to, and there are experts in that, and I'd love to, maybe if I have time as I'm getting older, to learn that specialty, you know.
You know, as I asked folks this, well, not only in this event, but elsewhere, I hear a lot of good answers. So I love your answer. My answer would be, and I've shared this elsewhere before, but I would want to be a master piano player simply because the ability to express yourself in this very different medium than I do really vibes with me, I guess. But now I love your answer as well. I get it. And I've wanted that too, now that you remind me. It is a very cool thing to be able to wander out there and know at an expert level, you know, that you can eat this, you can eat that, and that, you know, what these various things do for you. I'm rough around the edges like you. I have some knowledge of that, but not nearly enough. I love that answer. Well, you're clearly going to live a long life, so I look forward to talking to you years down the line when you are an expert in that, so I'll ask you some tips on that front. Hopefully I'm still doing this. Awesome, man. All right, well, let's get to the big question. So thriving while living long versus merely surviving is really our ultimate goal. With that in mind, and well, from your profoundly vast areas of expertise, Dr. Fuhrman, will you please share 3 to 5 of the proven most effective steps to avoid and possibly even overcome disease, live long, and thrive while doing so? What would a first step be?
You know, as you asked me that question, I'm thinking of that we're all, you know, we want to live to be a full, long life. I'm saying the average natural lifespan for humans should be between 97 and 107 years old. And to thrive, how important is the brain? I mean, if you don't have great brain function, if you don't maintain who you are, your memory and your thoughts and your intelligence, your creativity, and what's the point of living that longer? So I'm living and thriving to protect my brain. So when I do reach that age of 85, 90, 95, I have my full brain faculty intact. You know, even if I do lose something in my body, at least my brain's going to be fully there. So that's why these things we're talking about are really to make the right decisions now, where you can protect your brain to be there fully for you as you age healthfully and gracefully into your later years. Okay, the first thing is avoid the caloric rush. Write that down, caloric rush. Because some calories that we eat pass into the bloodstream very rapidly and spike calories in the blood. So how many calories can the blood hold? And how many calories can you fit in there? Some people understand that term glycemic load. It means when you eat a food that turns into sugar in the blood, like a white flour, like a bagel or a pizza, or honey or maple syrup, or white rice or white potato, or they eat these foods that generally are white. I always say the white of the bread, the sooner you're dead. You know,
Wow.
They eat these foods that are white, and of course, white flour is a sugar equivalent. It rushes into the bloodstream at the same rate as if you just ate straight sugar. In nature, you can't get calories into the blood so quickly. It takes time if you're eating a natural wheat berry or a piece of fruit with the sugar that's intracellular bound to the matrix and fibers, or you're eating beans or nuts or greens. Any carbohydrate eases into the bloodstream over hours, not over minutes, you know. But this rush of calories in the bloodstream has an effect on brain function. It actually affects neurosteroids and hormones in the brain almost immediately. And so I'm saying the combination of the caloric rush, not only from the glucose entering the bloodstream through processed and high glycemic carbohydrates, but also from oil. Most Americans get all their fat from either animal fats and oils, and both animal fats and oils have a high caloric rush. They enter the bloodstream very rapidly. When you can carry 400 calories in the blood within 5 minutes after a meal, wow, that brain gets a hit.
Yeah.
And if you ate the fats, like on a nutritarian diet that I recommend, we get our fats from nuts and seeds and avocado, not from animal fats and oils. So when those fats enter the bloodstream, the fats are bound to fibers and sterols and stanols. Those fats enter the bloodstream over 3 to 4 hours, a couple of calories a minute, not 100 calories a minute. So I'm saying right now that the spike of calories in the blood affects your brain. It ages the brain. It stimulates not just the dopamine centers that are like the opiate centers of the brain, but other centers of the brain that control apostat. And it makes you almost like addicted to this overly stimulation of the brain. The brain gets overly stimulated. Over time, you become dopamine insensitive. You feel empty and unsatisfied. Over time, if you don't mimic or repeat this high caloric rush anymore, and food now is no longer for sustenance, you become dependent on excess calories from exposing yourself as if you were smoking or snorting or taking any kind of drug, opiates. It's almost like an opiate to the brain because it hits the same centers. This caloric rush hits the same centers and it makes us dependent. So after a meal, you want to have a dessert. A cup of frozen cherries is not adequate for you. A peach or a fig is not adequate as a dessert. A banana is not adequate. It's not calorically, it's not going to give you a caloric rush. You got to fry the banana. You got to put some cheesecake or heavy cream or coconut oil in there. You got to put some extra sweetener or sugar or honey in there. You can't just eat a plain piece of fruit. That's not going to satisfy you. It's not going to give you enough of a caloric rush. You're too addicted to your chronicity of over-consuming high caloric density foods. We have to recognize that it's not just the caloric density and the amount of calories you eat. The amount of calories you desire are now going to be accelerated in an upward direction because you're chronically become addicted or tolerant to foods that have this high caloric rush. And it reminds me of one of my favorite movies is called August Rush. Have you ever seen that movie, Brian?
No.
Well, you gotta watch that movie, August Rush. It's a fantastic movie. It's unrelated to the caloric rush. It's just
I love the aside. There's a movie recommendation for everyone, bonus. I love it. Well, so avoid caloric rush. And you gave a very clear explanation of why. It largely explains the obesity and many other related epidemics, is this very low in terms of nutrient density foods that have been engineered in many cases to appeal to our most basic senses: salt, sugar, potato chips, are a great example. So,
and white flour and oil are probably the most overly consumed calories in America that are responsible for obesity epidemic and a disease epidemic. It's probably white flour and oil because people eat so much white flour and so much oil.
Yeah, and just for clarity's sake, super low density, almost no nutrition in those foods, far more bad things that work against you in many other ways, but you feel not satisfied until you eat gobs and gobs of the white flours and the oils and the foods that are fried in it, etc. So you want to avoid those foods. For clarity's sake here, what foods do you want to consume instead, Dr. Fuhrman?
So that leads to the second, out of the 5 or 6 things we're going to talk about, that leads to number 2 thing that besides avoiding the caloric rush is make sure you eat these 3 foods almost at every major meal. And we're talking about eating nuts and seeds and beans because nuts and seeds are our most favorable source of fat. And beans are our most favorable source of carbohydrate and even protein. They're high in protein too, and green vegetables, of course. So we're talking about nuts, seeds, beans, and greens, and we're talking about eating 2 major meals a day. I mean, you could have 2 meals a day and a snack, or 3 meals a day where 1 meal is smaller, which is usually breakfast, But our 2 major meals, which is usually lunch and dinner, but it doesn't have to be that, do contain green vegetables, beans, and nuts and seeds with each of the meals, not just with one of the meals. Because when you eat a little bit of nuts, even a half an ounce of nuts, half an ounce to an ounce, we're talking about a little bit of nuts or seeds, and a little bit of beans, even a couple of tablespoons of beans. You know, it doesn't have to be a bean burger or a whole beans main dish, but even a couple of tablespoons. Just the fact that you ate a little beans and nuts with that meal, those foods are absorbed so slowly that they actually slow down gastric emptying. You know what's funny is because, you know, those new drugs like Ozempic and Mojambo or whatever these drugs are, these drugs people are taking, they slow gastric emptying to make you feel full longer. But the natural way to do that is to eat beans and nuts and with your meal. But of course, that's a safe way to do it. The drug way is a cancer-causing way to do it. You know, it ages you to take a drug to do it, but it actually goes the other way when you do it naturally. But I'm saying when you have a little fat with that meal in the form of nuts that are absorbed slowly, you facilitate the absorption of the anti-cancer and brain-sustaining phytochemicals by 20 to 50 times as much by having these slowly absorbing fats. And then when you have the protein complementary of the nuts and seeds and the beans and the greens, you not only have a great protein bioavailability, but you also have the fact that you have sustained protein absorption, and the meal then it satiates you for many, many hours, so you're satisfied with fewer calories. It's not like halfway between lunch and dinner you're going to be wanting to have, you know, just starving or wanting to eat food. You're digesting this food and you have sustained level of caloric absorption without the caloric rush, with adequate fat and protein. Because so many people advocating plant-based eating, they don't really have adequate fat and protein in their diet. They don't, which we need to have that long life that protects the brain, because we have lower protein bioavailability as we age. And even though plant foods have adequate protein, just imagine if you're pouring oil over your food, if 30% of your diet is oil, then you just took 30% of the protein out of your diet, because if you had nuts and seeds as a source of fat, you'd be eating the fat with the protein. If you took what I'm saying is that you put sugar in your diet, it's not the sugar, well, if you used, the point is that we're using these whole foods that are protein rich, but they're also absorbed very slowly, and it enables us to have more protein when our protein needs are higher as a toddler or in the elderly person. It's funny because I had a study coming out of Europe that showed that vegans had higher hip fracture rates than people on meat-based diets. I added up the protein and the calories eaten in the British study and how much calcium they were consuming. And they were consuming less than 500 milligrams of calcium a day, and their protein was only about 10 to 12% of total calories. And I compared it to a nutritarian diet where people are eating a little bit of nuts and beans with each meal, and green vegetables, by the way, with the two major meals a day. And the protein content was between 18 and 20% protein, not 10 to 12%, and the calcium content was almost double compared to this less ideally designed plant-based diet. And I compared it to the meat part of the study. The people in that study eating meat were having less protein. They were having between 15 and 18% than people on a nutritarian diet. I'm saying, wow, how is this possible that people eating meat are getting less protein than people eating a totally plant-based nutritarian diet? And I looked at the diet and tried to figure it out. It's because they were using so much oil in their diet. They were having some, eggs and some meat, but all the other things they were eating, like white flour and oil and sugar, were such a high percent of calories of processed foods that we're getting other contributors to the protein other than the meat and the eggs. So with a nutritarian diet, the whole grains, the beans, the nuts, the seeds, the green vegetables, almost everything you're eating is adding to that total protein content of the diet. So it actually was more than protein adequate. So we're getting a diet that's more like 60-20-20, 60% carbohydrate, 20% protein, and 20% fat, as compared to many even vegan advocates advocating like 80-10-10, with people getting 10% fat and 10% protein, which I'm saying is inadequate, especially inadequate for people to maintain brain size and muscle mass and to maintain that thriving vitality into our 80s and 90s.
Well, we have discussions, everyone listening, a lot of discussions prior to make sure we're giving you amazingly helpful information. And I know coming up, I want to dive a bit deeper into protein and fat, if you don't mind, Dr. Fuhrman.
Sure.
Let me reiterate here. So nuts, seeds, beans, incredibly nutrient-dense foods, the protein, loaded with protein in general, loaded with healthy fats in general, in opposition to the foods that cause caloric rush from your first answer.
Correct.
Point is, everybody, that these foods are nutrient dense and therefore designed to be digested my words, slowly by the body, you're going to feel satisfied. You don't need to consume half a bag of potato chips or, 6 pieces of white bread toast or anything to finally feel full. And then as time goes on, it takes 8 pieces of bread and the whole bag of potato chips. Instead, these are nature's way of keeping you healthy and helping to reduce weight. Now, that said, Dr. Fuhrman, you're renowned for so many things through your books, certainly through your Eat to Live retreat, which everyone, I must note, has helped people who are quote unquote hopeless. It's known for that amongst other things, meaning extreme obesity, extreme ill health conditions. They've gone to his Eat to Live retreat and have reversed all of that. It's an amazing place. I know there's a waiting list. If anything I just said describes you or resonates with you, it's still so worth looking into. With that noted, Dr. Fuhrman, I might challenge you here, although much doesn't seem to challenge you, but what do you say in a brief period of time that we've got here for someone who is so, my word, addicted to these non-nutrient dense foods that when they put a seed or a nut or a bean certainly in their mouths, they're like, yuck. Oh, I just don't like the taste because they've been warped to the taste of these non-nutrient dense foods?
Well, I always want people to get a thorough education in this science before they jump in so they don't have to worry about things like that. Because they know that the feeling poorly may take over the first week from withdrawal from their poor diet is temporary. And the taste buds change over time. And their overly exposure to the bliss point, to high sweets or high salt or even high spice, deadens their taste buds. They can't enjoy the natural flavors of natural foods anymore. So we enhance their taste muscle as we're teaching them fantastically delicious recipes. And almost everybody over time says they enjoy this way of eating as much as their old diet, except that takes time. It could take, 3 to 6 months, but they're still getting a lot better taste control even after the first few weeks. But of course, it's a temporary thing. When people know it's temporary, they're willing to put up with it. So it's just about giving people the proper and full education before they jump into this.
Right. In this case, knowledge is power. There may be a transition if any of that describes you and you have an aversion to the idea of seeds, nuts, beans, green veggies for that matter. First of all, it's A-okay. Second of all, I have to plug that Dr. Fuhrman's books have some of the tastiest healthy recipes, and I have encountered, and because of what I do, I've read, it might be thousands of books by now, and their recipes. His are some of the best out there for making it tasty. Another reason I highly recommend his work and on his websites. So check out Dr. Fuhrman's recipes, especially if you're like, I don't know about eating these things because they don't taste good. They will. It may take time, and there's ways to make them taste amazing. He's a master of that. So I'm just stating it like it is here. All right, my friend, if you have anything else to share, go for it.
Oh, I was just saying, when you were saying about the retreat, I was saying what's really cool is that I'm starting to keep track of the amount of people that are getting reversing diabetes and high blood pressure. And it's almost the same thing for diabetes and high blood pressure. It was so interesting that about 75% of people with type 2 diabetes get rid of it within 6 weeks. And the same thing with high blood pressure. People on blood pressure medications are off 75% within 6 weeks, but then about 90% get rid of their high blood pressure and diabetes within 6 months. It's funny because I was looking at diabetes only, but then I started looking at the blood pressure findings and thinking, wow, it's almost the same thing for diabetes and high blood pressure. Most everybody's getting rid of their diabetes and high blood pressure, coming back to normal, but some people do it quickly and some people take a little normal. But the point is that when you abstain from all these disease-causing practices, it's amazing how fast the body repairs itself.
And that is a very good motivation and reason, if there is any issues with a short transition away from these junk foods to these nature's best foods that include seeds, nuts, and beans. So avoid caloric rush. Have seeds, nuts, beans with every meal. Those are two. What would a next vital step be to live long and thrive while living long?
The next most important step is salt is salt. In other words, salt is salt means any kind of salt you eat, Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, any kind of crazy salt you think is good for you, it's not. The total sodium level, your lifetime exposure to sodium damages the brain in the microvascular, rigidity. In other words, we get cerebral microbleeds, and we get microvascular hemorrhaging, little pinpoint damage and chronic inflammation in the overexposure to salt that results in the eventual rigidity of blood vessels in the brain, causing cerebral small vessel disease as we age, which then loses our intelligence, our memory, but also predisposes us to having a hemorrhagic stroke as we get older. So all what I'm saying here, that possibly the risk of hemorrhagic stroke is even higher in a plant-based eater than a meat-based eater. A person eating bacon and cheese and meat has more atherosclerosis, which the vessel becomes thicker and more resistant to cracking open and breaking in the brain. And one who's had a clean blood vessel that's been damaged, whose interior walls have been made friable and weakened because of chronic exposure to a high salt diet. So we know that in Asian countries where they eat a lot of salt, like 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams of salt a day, they have much higher rates of hemorrhagic stroke than we do in this country. We still eat too much salt here, but as we cut out the clot causing and heart disease and ischemic stroke causes, that you still could have a hemorrhagic stroke even on a plant-based diet if you're still using salt. What I'm saying is that salt ages our tissues and particularly ages the brain. And it starts out when we're very young, because we look at populations that don't salt their food, like the Yanomamo Indians that are like a primitive Amazon tribe who don't salt their food.
Yep.
Well, their toddler's blood pressure are the same as the teenage blood pressures. And the teenage blood pressure is the same as the middle-aged or people. It doesn't go, in this country, teenagers have much higher blood pressure than toddlers. We're seeing the damage from salt even as youngsters. And then our mid-adult population has a higher blood pressure. By the time people are 65, almost everybody's on drugs for lowering the blood pressure already. So in any case, it's chronically damaging your blood pressure. And the sooner you stop the damage, the better. And it's the lifetime exposure to cigarettes, your pack years, that determines your risk of lung cancer. And it's your lifetime exposure to salt that determines your risk of this, we're talking about, cerebral small vessel disease and the propensity to hemorrhagic stroke in later life, which affects cognition. And in other words, salt is dangerous, and the sooner you get it out of your diet, the better, and it deadens your taste buds. So now the things that you can't even taste the natural salty flavor of natural foods. Now natural vegetables and has sodium in them. We get adequate sodium just from natural foods. But how much added sodium you're going to put on what nature put in natural foods is the question. And certainly if you had a couple of hundred extra over and above what nature gave you, nature might give you 0.5 milligram per calorie. So you have 1,500 calories a day, you're getting about 600 to 700 milligrams of sodium, which is all you need. But if then you took in an extra 100 or 200 in something you ate, like some mustard or Ezekiel bread or something, then you'll still be way under 1,000. But if you're taking in 500, 800, 3,000, you're taking in salt way over and above that, then you're slowly causing damage in proportion to those salt years. So the years of salt times the amount of grams over that, let's say 1,000 grams, that's maybe acceptable. So if you had 2 grams a day, 2,000, or 3 grams, 4 grams a day, if you had 4 grams, that would be 3 grams over the 1,000 that's acceptable. That'll be 3 times 30 years you did that. That's 90 salt years. You pay a price for that. So people just are under this false belief system that they think they can get away with everything. They think they don't pay a price. You can't escape from the biological laws of cause and effect, and you do pay a price with aging of your tissues in the brain, and when you live in a manner that's not commensurate with the ideal exposure for the human species. Every animal has their ideal nutritional exposure, and our ideal nutritional exposure is not 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 milligrams of sodium a day. Doesn't matter where the sodium's coming from. Oh, this is a good sodium. This sodium has minerals in it. Doesn't matter. It's still going to damage you from all that sodium.
Right. And first, let me make a plea to everyone listening. Pretty much everything and anything you hear in this important summit is worth sharing with loved ones. This one is one of the important ones to share because there is such a mixed impression of salt in this country and in this world today. There's ideas that it's actually healthy and good for you. I think that's what you were alluding to, Dr. Fuhrman, when you started talking about any kind of salt. It doesn't matter if it comes from Himalayan mountains or the sea or whatever. Salt,
the moon or the rock.
Exactly. Salt is salt. Nature, in what we eat is providing sufficient amount without salting our foods. I'm going to throw you the easy softball pitch and ask you a rather obvious question simply because it's got to be asked. So what do we do if we want flavor in our foods and we don't want a bunch of bland food?
Well, your taste buds get stronger, and now things have flavor because you stopped all the extra salt. But of course, I personally use a lot of recipes with roasted garlic, different herbs, and I use a lot of dehydrated mushrooms, for flavor and texture. We make sauces out of nuts and seeds. Like for example, I could mix roasted garlic with cashews and hemp seeds with some nutritional yeast and onion powder and make like a garlic nutter a spread. I can throw some tomato sauce, balsamic vinegar in there, make it into a dressing. I can put some basil in there, make a pesto out of it. There's all these incredible ways we can flavor foods. I'm just, giving the tip of the iceberg, but the foods taste better without the salt, not worse,
Yeah, and that's very true. You might go through, again, an adjustment period, but you'll notice that, folks, if excessive salt is an issue for you. And as many people listening know, I'm a massive advocate of herbs, tiny little powerhouses of various sorts of nutrition unto themselves. And, of course, they taste amazing. And there are certainly an abundance of them beyond the ones we all know worth trying for flavoring your foods. And, again, I must, it sounds like I'm gushing because I am. Again, the recipes Dr. Fuhrman has in his books and beyond, exceptional, including for what he just noted, including various herbs and flavoring your food. So, another question. We're going to go back to the 19th century for this one. As I understand it, many people were suffering from a thyroid issue back in the 19th century, I think especially in the Midwest of the United States. So they decided to add iodine to salt. And there's still a belief today amongst some that, well, what am I going to do about iodine if I stop using iodized salt? Because I've heard that many of us are low in it. How would you respond to that, Dr. Fuhrman?
Well, you can better control your iodine intake if you're not using salt and, control it. We're trying to minimize salt, using salt as a source of iodine. That's like, wow. Why don't you just put your, B12 into the salt and or why don't you mix your vitamin C into the sugar and you put more sugar on your food to get vitamin C? The whole thing is rather ridiculous. But in any case, yes, people do need a source of iodine in their diet, and especially if we're not eating seafood and seaweeds. Kelp is high in iodine, but obviously I do recommend people supplement their diet with some conservative use of supplements that are not optimized on a vegan or plant-based diet. That includes B12, DHA, vitamin D, iodine, K2, and zinc as well, because zinc is more readily absorbed from animal products than it is from plants. So I want to optimize brain function in later life. We're not just giving people the food and the supplements to survive into an average lifespan. Now, you don't have to think that hard. But if you want to go to the super extended lifespan and have full mental and physical capacity, then we have to plan ahead and make sure we're doing everything almost optimized. If we're going to really control our genetics, you say, and maximize our chances to be the full, creative, intellectual us when we're old.
Well said. And, it's funny you said that because that's what they try to do, the food industry is, now with vitamin C, and these incredibly high sugar, low nutrient dense foods.
Why put the iodine into salt? Why don't you just put it into smoking cigarettes? People smoking their iodine then.
Yes. So that's not your fourth step, right? Smoke cigarettes with iodine? Good, okay. No.
It's almost like the stupidity of the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association, because they say people who have heart disease should cut their sodium down to below 1,500 a day. And they're, wait, what? People who have heart disease? That's like saying people with lung cancer should stop smoking. If they agree that salt is an issue creating heart disease and creating 22, I think it's the 22% of all deaths in the modern world are caused by salt intake, right?
Wow.
22% of all deaths. So they're saying, well, instead of telling people with heart disease to cut down on salt, if that was, or people who have lung cancer to cut back on smoking, if they recognize it's a cause of heart disease and contributes to it, then the whole population should have cut it out. Or sort of cut it back to that at a young age, not wait till people develop heart disease and then cut it back. The whole thing is utterly insane.
It is. If you're about to get hit by a bus, try stepping out of the way versus stay out of the way of buses. I get it. And it is insane. Awesome, my friend. Well, fantastic insights so far. Let me ask, what would another key step be?
Believe it or not, the next step is eat dessert after dinner at night.
What?
Yeah, have dessert.
Okay. All right.
You know why? Because people overeat at dinner. They make dinner their major meal and they eat till they're full, or they keep eating late at night, because most healing and repair takes place during sleep when you're not digesting food at the same time as you're sleeping, which means you have to finish and digest dinner before you go to sleep at night to get the full magnificent effect of the longevity effects of sleep. So sleep is a longevity activity, and we sleep better and we pursue that ability of the body to have the anti-aging phenomenon occur, and most weight loss occurs during sleep as well too when you're not digesting food. The trick is to eat a lighter dinner where you finish dinner earlier. And we utilize dessert in a way so people can start to have a piece of good tasting dessert that's a reasonable sized piece right before they get full with their dinner, which marks the end of eating for the day. It means close down the restaurant, shut off the kitchen, put everything away, clean your teeth, water pick, floss, brush, whatever you're supposed to do. Occupy your evenings with other pursuits, singing, dancing, entertainment, watching, hiking, whatever you want to do. That's fun for you, playing games, doing things. Don't recreate without food. You have to learn how to recreate without food. So by having dessert, it makes a clear demarcation between the time of day when you're eating and the time of day when you're no longer eating anymore. So by having a little whipped frozen banana with a couple of macadamia nuts, a little vanilla bean powder, or a little baked apple with a healthy whipped cream or avocado icing on top, or whatever we want to make people, a little piece of carrot cake or a little piece of a bean brownie or a little piece of a pistachio ice cream that we made, that was all healthy with just fruit for sweetening. By having that little bit, it actually, we find, helps people eat a lower calorie dinner because they can see that dessert, they know it tastes good and it's going to end them off, and they can stop eating when they have their sensible sized portion. They had 400 calorie dinner and then they had their dessert of another 50 to 80 calories and boom, they're done for the day. That's it. No more calories for the day. Or 350 calories, whatever they're supposed to be eating, they ate, they had their dessert, and I use it too. I feel that once I have my dessert, I'm not going to eat anything else. I'm going to clean my teeth and that's it. And without the dessert, I'm tempted to, maybe I'll have a couple more figs, maybe I'll have this, that, maybe I'll have something else, maybe I'll have this, but I have that dessert, I know, boom, when I had the dessert, I was eating dinner, I feel satisfied, I'm not full, and I choose to have the dessert at a point where I'm just satisfied but not full, and I know I'm not going to overeat. So the whole point is when I'm going to bed at night, I don't feel like I'm still digesting food. I've had finished digesting, and that's one of the main keys to pushing that envelope of human longevity.
All right. Well, then the shock effect is worn off because it makes complete sense. It's a mental marker. First of all, it's a signal to your brain, done for the day. So to be clear, eat dessert after dinner, not after breakfast, not after lunch, question mark?
Correct.
Okay.
And sometimes your dessert is just some frozen cherries or frozen mango or something that you took out of the freezer right when you started to eat. By the time you got to it, frozen jackfruit. By the time you got to it 20 minutes later after you ate the dinner, it's like half defrosted. So it tastes like an ice cream, soft ice cream, still cold, chilled, but not hard as a rock. And it's like a really nice way to end eating for the day.
I love it. And there is also, as I understand it, a benefit. The sugar effect is lessened when you eat the sweet shortly after a meal versus isolating this dessert in the middle of the day, or a snack time or 2 hours after you eat. Is that true?
Yeah, it's funny because, the conventional natural hygiene used to think that, we should eat fruit alone or we should food combined, so the foods are not combined. We're eating like the fruit alone, the protein alone, the starch alone, make it easy for the digestive tract. But now we're realizing that we get better results when we actually mix these things together in one meal because it helps us feel satisfied with a lower amount of calories and we're not feel like we have to eat all day long.
Wonderful. Well, this is a very uplifting answer because so many of us like to hear that dessert is good and in fact advocated in moderation and correct kind of desserts.
But there's no sugar. All the sweetness in the dessert comes from fruit and fruit alone.
Right. And on that front, one more thing I want to just briefly ask before we move on here is you're a big advocate, again, in these recipes in your books, etc., of using fruit as a sweetener versus isolated sugars. Can you just share a bit about that and how to do that, perhaps?
Sure. Well, the major sweetener we use for a fancy dessert are medjool dates. But we don't ever use a dessert with more than one medjool date per person per dessert. We're usually using a half a medjool date, which means one medjool date sweetens the dessert for two people. Like if I'm making a banana ice cream, I'll use, let's say, one banana for two people with maybe a handful of walnuts or macadamia nuts in it and some real vanilla bean powder and a little bit of plant milk to whip it up. And then if I'm putting the cocoa powder in or the cacao nibs and want to make a chocolate ice cream, it has a little more bitterness to it. So then I add one date for two servings. So now it's one banana, one frozen banana, one date, a little, the handful of nuts and the half a teaspoon of real vanilla bean powder, or the quarter teaspoon, and now I have a heaping teaspoon of cocoa powder if I add the date to it. So I added a date to sweeten. Like I'll add the date when I use almond butter and beans with the cocoa powder and dates to make a bean brownie. So we'll make and then we'll make an avocado icing for it if we want to. So I'll use a little bit of date, but we're not using an overly high amount of dates. Usually desserts are plenty sweet enough.
Yeah.
If we're making for 10 people, we put 5 medjool dates in, for example.
Wonderful. And listen, everyone, if you haven't tried that, it is quite satisfying. Let me just put it that way. It will hit the sweet spot that you want it to hit. So, wow, what a great and interesting fourth step here. We have time for one more. As I noted toward the start, I know there is one more. I'm going to nudge in that direction. There's a lot of confusion out there regarding protein, regarding fat, particularly, especially if you are plant-based or fully vegetarian, vegan. So what would your fifth and final step be, Dr. Fuhrman?
Wow, I could talk so much about this for like an hour, but let me try to get to the points, because I think most of the studies on meat and protein for years showed that it wasn't an advantage to take meat out of the diet, because they kept people who reduced meat just ate more chicken and more eggs and more other sources of animal protein. And it's animal protein in general that accelerates death from all-cause mortality. But when people start changing, instead of changing from red meat to white meat, when they start using more plant protein sources in place of the animal protein, that's when all the major studies of the last 5 years have showed dramatic increase in lifespan when people get more protein from plant foods and less from animal products. And that means the high protein plant foods are green vegetables, beans, nuts and seeds, and whole grains. And green vegetables, of course we said vegetables, as opposed to eating things like oil and sweeteners, and which take away that protein content. So when you eat a nutritarian diet, which is the word I coined for a diet that's designed to be maximally lifespan supporting and protein adequate, which gives you more protein and more nutritional variety and more fat than some of these lower fat, extremely low fat vegan diets, which don't give you the opportunity to absorb as much phytochemicals. And we have more than 25 solid studies that all corroborate each other, that adding more nuts and seeds to the diet doesn't just dramatically decrease risk of heart attack and stroke in later life, but it also decreases cancer and all-cause mortality. That cutting fat down too low is actually unfavorable. So many used to think, well, the advantage of plant-based diet is that it's lower in fat, but really it's the type of fat, not that it's lower in fat, because when we eat more nuts and seeds, we extend lifespan. When we take a plant-based diet too low in fat by cutting out nuts and seeds and avocado, it lowers the absorption of plant-based phytochemicals that prevent cancer, and it lowers the protein quality of the diet as well. So by eating more beans with nuts and seeds, obviously, we increase the protein bioavailability of the diet with aging that helps maintain bone and muscle mass with aging. And also, the critical thing about fat is that the omega-3 index does matter with regard to later life brain size. So we're getting the ALA, or alpha-linolenic acid, the short-chain omega-3, from walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, and hemp seeds. We're also supplementing with a source of usually plant-based omega DHA and EPA and DHA to assure that omega-3 index is greater than 6, is 6 to 9, let's say. Because it's funny how you can ask these plant-based advocates, and I don't think they're purposely knowing that they're hurting people or damaging people's brains in later life. I think they're just such enthusiastically trying to convince themselves and their followers that a plant-based diet is adequate without supplementation, it's good enough, it's okay to cut out animal products, they're going with theories and hypotheses and saying, oh, well, you live long enough and you blah, blah, blah. But the problem is that the facts are facts, and there's more than a dozen studies that have come out in the last 10 years that all corroborate each other and show the same thing, and that is lower levels of omega-3 index are associated with brain shrinkage and increased risk of dementia in later life. And we can't ignore facts. We have to go with the studies, not just what you want to believe.
Right. So some supplementation may be necessary. And here's a general statement, and you can tweak it as a final say here, but as you age, eating plenty of protein and healthy fats is important. To clear up any confusion, there's some advocates of low protein as you age out there, and getting it from plants is more than adequate, but just make sure you're eating plenty of those beans, nuts, seeds, etc. to do so. Valid?
Yes, accurate, except you don't have to eat plenty, you just have to eat an adequate amount. We don't have to think, well, we gotta eat enough calories and overeat, because if you eat the right amount of calories, even to maintain yourself slim, if you eat the right food, you're gonna get the right stuff into your body. You don't have to try to stuff food in to get enough nutrients, you just have to eat the right food.
Well said, my friend. And this is where I get a bit teary-eyed as we close down here, because I have been immersed in natural health, longevity, research, at least hundreds of interviews, working closely with all kinds of wonderful human beings, experts out there. And I have to say this, through your amazing books, your TV shows, through your influence on all these other experts, few others, if any others, have made the widespread and positive impact that you have on our health today. Directly and through others sharing your teachings, you've helped at least millions of people live longer and better lives, i.e. thriving. And I guarantee you that your work will reach far into the future and help so many more. And on a very personal note, I've said this before, it bears repeating, no one has personally had an impact on my own nutrition and health more than you. So listen, everyone, because, well, first, you're certainly going to want to revisit all that Dr. Fuhrman just shared, and because you don't want to miss any of the most powerful steps to live long and well that you're hearing throughout this entire event, please do consider ordering the recordings and transcripts of Live Long and Thrive today while the early bird savings are still in effect. And then one more very strong recommendation.